Hey everyone, it's Nightlight9, and in this video, we're going over the new Hellhouse EX3. And I've got a lot of thoughts about this one, but I'm not going to go through them. It would take a little bit of time. I'm sure I will see some of your comments that you had similar thoughts that I did, so I'll just go ahead and comment on that there. We're going to get into the team setup right away. 200,000 combat power. It looks scary. I don't think it should, though, just because of a lot of Arcanums and things like that. But let's go ahead and get into it. Now, there are a couple things that I did that are a little bit weird here. Two of those things were actually things that my buddy Al Kaiser helped me with, because I had tried this probably about 14 or 15 times and was getting him down to 5 to 10% HP and couldn't finish it. But I've now been able to do it 2 times in a row, so I feel confident that this strategy will work. Starting off with Aerith, she is just set up for heals and debuffs, and she's going to debuff in the form of Ice Breach down here on the bottom and Fire Breach. The only other thing I gave her materia-wise is Fyra, and the reason for that is because you're going to need to be able to break this boss's gauge, and I'll just call them, barriers or shields. There's a fire shield, there's an ice shield. The ice shield is easy because we have plenty of ice Arcanums, and Sephiroth does tons of ice damage. However, the fire shields, because we don't have any fire mastery or fire Arcanum, that's going to be a lot harder. So when it's time to pitch in, Aerith can do that. Sub-equipment, I put these 2 items on her for stats and HP. They're not significantly important. This is probably the most important sub-weapon, and it's for the boost heal. We don't really care about anything else on that. Moving over to Tifa, this is where things get a little bit weird. Normally you would expect that Sephiroth would have Shiva because he does have the most ice potency. Primarily because Edged Wings is my highest starred up weapon that's not an event weapon. But because he also has the best physical and magical attack stats, I'm going to be using Ifrit on him and Shiva on Tifa. That way we can actually break through the fire shield easier. The number 1 weapons that we have on Tifa, we have her new Holy Flame gloves. You can find this on one of the 2 current banners. This is good for ice potency. The physical ice damage is not super helpful because this boss it's more effective to use magic attacks. The only debuff you can do to him is a magic defense debuff, so physical is not really that good. But speaking of debuffs, this is again why Tifa is so important. Kaiser Knuckles here, awesome. Magic defense decrease, potency mid with 1 shot here for us, and max potency high. Now, normally, I'm not too concerned about the max potency going to high because it is kind of more efficient to just get the 4 ATB for the mid debuff and move on. However, this boss, the strategy requires you to do certain thresholds of damage in short windows of time. So we want to really maximize our damage, and one of the ways we will be doing that is by trying to debuff his defense to magic and get that as high as we possibly can. Moving along, we have 2 materias that are stat 6 and 1 which is Fyra Blow. Again, I think Fyra is probably better than the Blow, but because she's just so set up for physical attack, I went with that. Sub-equipment here, we've got Torn Wing on, and that's just for some physical defense and decent stats. We've got Nameless here in the 2nd slot, and that's primarily for HP because she was a little bit low. And then here, we just have Iron Greatsword for some extra attack stats and that crit potency to whatever extent it helps us. Moving along to Sephiroth, he is our main damage dealer. So we are using Edged Wings. This is the probably surprise weapon for me. I've talked a lot of smack on this weapon, but the second piece of advice that Al Kaiser gave me, which really did make a difference for this fight, is using Aonibi. Now, it is true that the mid potency that it gives from 1 cast is normally long-term going to net you less DPS than just casting Aerial Frostblade with Edged Wings 1 more time. However, the niche that this falls into is when you need to be able to do damage in a short window of time, then it takes a little bit of a turn. The second thing is, this boss is going to do several magic attack down debuffs, and we're going to use this to cancel out those debuffs. So this is actually a pretty important weapon, and that's why we're using it. These 2 materia here in the middle and bottom slot, these are just stat sticks for magic attack. Here we have his Fyra for fire damage. Sub-equipment, I'm using both of the new event weapons because they both give magic attack up, which is perfect, and physical defense, which is also very nice. You'll notice that Sephiroth's HP is considerably low compared to everyone else's, but his physical defense is sitting pretty well at 139. That'll allow him to survive. The last weapon here is I did put prototype Crimson Blade on him. This is for the boost fire potency. It's not a ton, but it was not too much lower in his stats, and I felt that the extra fire potency would help me get through those tough fire shield moments. So that is the team, and now we will get into the fight. Alright, so now we're into the fight, and normally I like to speed these up a little bit, but because this one is particularly tricky, I'm going to go ahead and cast it at normal speed. First thing you want to do is aerial frostblade one of these bombs. Just, you want to kill them before they do the burst because they do a ton of damage. Now, do not aerial frostblade the second one. Instead, we're going to conserve our ATB since Sephiroth is our main damage dealer. We're going to use this opportunity to cast Frenzied Stance. And the reason is because we're about ready to get into one of these windows here. And you can see that he's been debuffed, so we're going to cancel that out. Next, get on to Tifa, and you're going to do the magic defense debuff. You're going to do that 2 times to get that up to max potency. Then hop over to Aerith and Ice Breach. And you may want to get on Sephiroth and start casting Aerial Frostblade. Sometimes the AI likes to prioritize Frenzied Stance at times when I don't want it to. So I'm going to do a lot of micromanaging of ATB on everybody except for Aerith, and that's because since I set her up in a specific way, the AI is not going to be really wasting a whole lot of her ATB. So I'm just kind of keeping Ice Breach applied and hitting as much as possible at this point. I do see that my defense debuff is off, but I want to make sure that Sephiroth gets in his attacks. And you just kind of want to decide as far as when to magic debuff versus when to use like freezing blow on Tifa. I would just say if you have enough time to make it worth, getting in 2 hits, then it's probably good. If not, maybe just go towards the freezing blow for some more damage. Here, because he's stunned, we definitely want to get off as much debuffs as possible so that Sephiroth can continue to chunk him down, because every bit of damage is going to help. And now we're just kind of waiting. We see that he's starting to come out of the stun, which means we're going to switch stance soon. I'm going to use Frenzied Stance one more time just to get that buff up. Ideally, I would have wanted it to expire before I cast it again so that I actually get a full refresh. That was not the case, and I wanted to get it off before he did his thing so that I could try to sneak in another Aerial Frostblade right now. And if you cast it in about the first 1.5 to 2 seconds after he does his AoE move, you'll get it off. If not, you're going to hit the barrier and it's a waste. But that's okay, because if you don't have enough time, just use that as a chance to reapply Frenzied Stance. Other than that, you're just going to go back to killing these bombs off again. At this point, he has all these shields up, so while the adds are coming, there's no point in hitting him. All of the attacks will be blocked. Keep everybody healed up. That's kind of important. And he's gonna summon 3 different rounds of these mobs, and each time their timers are going to be, I think, a little bit shorter. Or for sure, the last round of them, the timer seems to be shorter. So this is a good moment. Again, Frenzied Stance works really well because since you're in those little time crunches, you don't have to worry quite as much about getting in enough damage on all of them. Keep your limits here. We're saving the limits, if you haven't noticed, for the times that we're going to need them the most. I got in another Frenzied Stance. Sephiroth's going to hit really hard, even with the Fires. And we can get these bombs cleared off pretty fast. If I notice one of them's kind of dying sometimes, I'll save Sephiroth's ATB in order to hit the next one. Okay, so now we know that he is ready to be DPS'd again, so we're immediately going to jump back onto Tifa and start debuffing his magic defense. And as soon as we get the second one to get that high potency, we will be ready to start trying to jump in and do as much DPS as possible. Hit the breaches with Aerith as well, and just keep, pay attention to his little circle so that you gotta switch stance in time. Ice Stream here is another AoE hit that hits pretty big. Just cure up after that. And we're still saving the limit breaks, and I'm saving Healing Wind mostly just to give a little bit of an extra boost for when we do first cast one of the big summons. Keeping Frenzied Stance applied, especially during these times of cooldown, like when he's doing these countdowns, it's good to do damage during this time, but it's most important to do damage after the countdown is over. So I'm trying to keep debuffs applied, and I'm trying to time them out because I know it's going to be 3, 2, 1, and then he's going to set up another shield, and we're going to have to break that down. And essentially, we're just trying to time everything out to have everybody buffed up and debuffed so that I can do a good amount of damage with my summon as soon as he gets this shield up. Okay, so here's the ice shield. Diamond Dust is going to be clicked. And Sephiroth hit so hard because of his attack buff, or his magic attack buff, that it actually took down quite a bit anyway. So then when we use Shiva, it's pretty much knocked out. This is still not really the hardest part of the fight. So far, everything has been pretty smooth. I never really ran into a whole lot of problems. I mean, yeah, there was some runs where I got wiped, during this or right before this phase. But once you if you watch this video a few times, or if you play it a few times and get the rotation down, you'll know when you have time to do your buffs, when you have time to get in debuffs, and when it's time to get in the damage. That is probably the #1 thing of importance with this fight. It's just knowing your timings and when is a good time to do different things. Seeing the Heaven Sword come up, I try to get another Frenzied Stance in. I know that the animation is so long for Aerial Frostblade, so that's why I'm trying to sneak in those buffs during times when I'm not going to be able to get damage in anyway. Here, I do one more Frenzied Stance for the high potency, because I'm going to have quite a bit of trouble at different points here. These bombs, for example, they have a pretty fast timer on them. So I want to make sure I can get those guys down as quickly as possible, and then also get through his fire damage. And if the bombs have appeared, that is not the time you want to start using your Frenzied Stance, because it's going to take away the time you need to get them down. So here, I jump over to Tifa, and I want to get him debuffed as much as possible before I use the summon, and that's going to be kind of important. Again, Frenzied Stance, making sure that's up, because we need to do as much fire damage as we possibly can. Alright, now we have the magic defense up to high potency down. We're going to get in one last fire breach, and now we're going to hit the fire damage with Hellfire. I comboed it with Healing Wind here. 1, it was a good time to get that in to heal everybody, but 2, I just need as much help with the fire damage as possible. And you'll notice it does significantly less to that gauge than we did with our Shiva Sephiroth combo last round. So now just start jamming your fires on everybody. You do want to keep the defense, or the magic defense buffs, the magic defense debuffs. You want to keep them up. I would say as long as that circle hasn't passed the halfway point, it's probably a good time to apply 1 debuff. But then you still just want to start jamming as much fires in as you possibly can. And you'll notice I'm cutting it pretty short. This is the hardest part of the fight for me. But luckily here, we got it down, we stalled him out. Time to get more debuffs up and get everybody kind of healed and just ready to take this jet stream attack. We are in the final phases. However, I have lost after this phase before, so you'll notice here too, as long as he doesn't have any of the the shields up, you can feel free to get in your summons, and that's what I'm doing here. Because I do know that what's going to happen after this jet stream is he's going to enter into one more countdown mode. Only after that countdown's over, he's immediately going to start up another version of the jet stream, ice stream. Only the bar, the little circle that goes down, it counts considerably faster than it did before. So you are on a super clock at this point, and you want to get in as much damage as you possibly can to bring him down. I can tell you that the first time I got this far, I got him down to such a sliver. I would say it was at the first line of the word hell there. Like, he couldn't have had even 1,000 HP left, and I died. So don't take it lightly. Make sure you get him fully debuffed so that Sephiroth can really hit with these attacks. And if you notice, I'm constantly jumping around to everybody as soon as I see ATB up, and I'm trying to get in as much damage as I possibly can, as quickly as I possibly can. And luckily here, with this Hellfire, we cleared it, and that is the end of the fight. If this video helped you clear Hell House EX3, subscribe for future content. I appreciate all of your support, and as always, thank you for watching.